Okay, I feel like I've said enough things while staring at the disembodied screen. Everyone's cropped in, everyone's ready to go, and I'm gonna transition over so everyone can stop hearing Jess say words and listen to you guys doing real people things.
How long can you hold that pose?
Hey. Oh no!
We're live, baby.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, welcome everyone. Hi, I'm Imani. I make games sometimes.
Imani, you said a little quiet on my end.
Oh, do I sound quiet?
Same.
I lowered
Yeah.
my volume. Here, is that better?
Never
That's
lower
much
your
better.
volume.
Louder?
I thought I was loud. So I turned myself down. But
You're perfect.
great. Thanks. I know I'm perfect. I appreciate the compliment. Anyway. Hi, welcome. Actually, let me pop chat out so I can actually see chat without having to do that. Okay, we're ready. I'm ready. I promise. Okay, here we go. So, welcome to Everything is a Remix. It is a panel about game design and basically cannibalizing other things to make better things. It sounds really gross, but it's really not that gross. I promise, it's fine. And like I said, I'm Imani. I go by Market Catter Dev is my dev company, and then Little Red Alchemist on the other side in real life. And then we're gonna go around the room, starting with whoever's over here.
Hi.
Who's over?
Oh, wait, by stream. I think it's Simon.
I think that's Simon.
Sure.
I
My
can't
name is
see the team
Simon.
anymore.
You can find me on Twitter at Lucha Libris. My game designs are available for you to peruse at colorspraygames.itch.io. And my current live-action role-playing game project, which is on hiatus until the pandemic is over, is atawaylarp.com.
Next, which would be Ajey.
That's me. My name's Ajey. I use he, him
Ajey,
pronouns.
sorry.
It's all good. My name's Ajey. I use he, him pronouns. Yes, Kevin, my hair. I am Boltman. I write Bolt. That's all I talk about now. You will also hear me ranting about game design using the tabletop chop shop hashtag, as well as occasionally reviewing cool games under the Ajey Reads hashtag. I'm just on Twitter all the time now.
Just on Twitter. We're just online all the time.
Yeah, it's kind of a problem. But yeah, my game Bolt is on itch at ajaypanda.itch.io. It is $5. It's real good. It's good shit.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wait. Yeah, that way.
yes.
That way.
Okay, yeah. So then it's me. So we jump the thing. Hi,
Yeah,
I'm
it's
Viditya.
Oh, no, we're in the same direction.
Right? Yeah.
Am I backwards? No, you're backwards. Never mind.
I'm backwards. I'm going this way.
Yeah.
No, we're going up. All right, fine. I'm Viditya. I use he, him pronouns. You can find me on Twitter at Viditya Valetti. And then you can find my games at vidityavaletti.itch.io. Yeah, I make good stuff. I make a bunch of things. And I talk about stuff. There's, I'm well-rounded is what I'm going to say.
A good round boy.
A big tall boy.
I am Alex. I use he, him pronouns. I design games on itch as Fractal Dragon. And you can find me on Twitter in the convenient link that will pop up if I have done my background work correctly. And that's it. Were we saying anything else? That's all.
No, I think that was everything. I forgot to say pronouns for myself. I use she, her pronouns.
Just pronouns are on the thing.
Yeah, pronouns are a thing. Yes.
On the overlay, I mean.
Oh, right.
We have our pronouns.
We do.
You know the thing.
This is fine. We're fine.
We are all professionals here.
We clearly know what we're doing.
Both of you to assume I know what I'm doing.
Both of you to assume anything. Okay. let's start off with the top. So let's talk. So because we're starting early, we're gonna start with hot takes because hot takes are fun. I have none of them except for don't harp on my fun, bro. So if anyone else has any hot takes about the most recent discourse that happened on the Twitters,
recent hot takes.
I don't know what happened.
Generic RPGs are fine. You don't have to like them. You don't have to like a particular one. They all have their uses and their drawbacks, and you should be intentional about which one you use.
Yeah. Intent is very important, especially when it comes to like what you're, like, what's the purpose of your story?
Yeah.
Like, what are you trying to tell? And then decide, like, use the generic that does that best, because it's square pegs and circle holes, you know?
Yeah, it's like Quest is fine for
Quest
specific
is fine.
things. PBTA is fine for specific applications. Fate is fine for particular.
Right.
Doesn't like
That's
how much do
panel.
you? Yeah.
How much do you need those things, right? I think a lot of confusion or conflict arises from people trying to map what they expect something to be onto what a game actually is and is intended to do. It's often, I think, what the struggle that people find when using these generic systems and expecting them to do something. It's like trying to cook with the wrong tools or like different tools. Like, yeah, you can chop up a bunch of vegetables with a chef's knife. You can use a paring knife, but it's going to take you a very long time. Maybe you should be putting it in a blender or a food processor. Maybe that's going to get you the results that you want. But like putting a onion in a food processor and expecting it to give you big like wedges that you might get from carefully going at it with a chef's knife is just like you're shooting yourself in the foot on that. So I think there's just people want to play a particular idea of a game in their head, and they want, for example, a very popular role-playing game. Some might even say the world's greatest role-playing game.
I would not say that.
They are wrong.
Some would. I wouldn't, but some would. But they want that to be something, right? If you sit down and you're like, what do you want out of that game? Because like my character only has points in being gay and crying. Those are my two skills. Like, you should probably not be playing the dungeon game. You should probably be playing like Monster Hearts, Dragon Hearts, like literally any other game that focuses on reinforcing romance or like interpersonal conflicts, as opposed to tactical combat that is one of the core pillars of the game that if you take it out, it falls apart.
Yeah. No. Also, as a person who only makes niche games, like literally specifically filling a very specific void of magical girls and giant robots and nothing else but magical girls and giant robots. Like I don't like don't try to stick a circle peg in a square hole. It's not gonna work. But if someone built you a perfectly good circle and a perfectly good circle hole, use that one because that one was built to do that thing.
Yep. Like I think the only exception I've seen is Flying Circus taking the Powered by the Apocalypse framework and making a crunchy tactical plane simulator out of it. And what happened is that the writer Erica Chappell just Theseus shipped the entire system until plane combat and Flying Circus scarcely looks like Powered by the Apocalypse. It's got hit locations.
It's like Night Witches on steroids, you know?
I love it.
Flying Circus it's very good. It's very gay.
This is the greatest pitch. I've like been circling around it for a little bit. I gotta really check out Flying Circus.
It's got hit locations.
It's been barrel rolling around it.
I love
hit locations. Please tell me where I can stop things.
Oh my god. I want hit locations, but like not the worst thing, you know?
That's Flying Circus.
Yeah.
Between Flying Circus and Lancer, like crunchy combat is back, and I am so hyped.
Ooh.
Love crunchy combat. Crunchy combat is my favorite thing in the whole world.
I cut my teeth on Pathfinder and I
hate
it.
So did I. Pathfinder's my one true love.
I can never go back, but I miss that feeling. You know what I mean? Like never been.
I can't play 2. I can't play 2E because it's not 1E, but I can't play 1E because 1E is not what I want. I just want character creation and the crunch from Pathfinder.
Lancer. Just
Lancer.
Load up
Lancer
and just go nuts.
The answer is Lancer.
Like I have this one mech character who's going the Horus Manticore, and literally his whole shtick is he's got like his evasion's crap. Anything can hit him. but he's got like 3 times the HP that's reasonable. And he just like loads on heat. And uses that to burn people. So literally, the guy's call sign is brimstone, and he's literally just gonna be like a Desi Baptist, like sinners in the hands of angry God preacher, just yelling like,
Someone please run Lancer for me is what I'm hearing. It's like,
God.
literally just like screaming the most like ridiculous
That's so
like
much.
Christian hell stuff. While just rolling up into the middle of combat and shooting spent nuclear fuel rods at people.
There we
you can
go.
do that in Lancer.
So know your systems.
Know your system.
yeah. Also, you can't complain that you don't have a system if you haven't tried every system. I know you haven't tried every system. Like I know you haven't tried every system.
And if you haven't tried enough systems, the big itch bundle for racial justice and equality has 1,500 systems in it that people just gave away for free. People giving away their games for free community copies. Like it's more accessible than it's ever been, and that's only going to keep increasing.
Yeah, like there's literally, I promise you, my hand to whatever deity you believe in. There is a system for the thing that you want to do. You just have to find it, and if you can't find it, build it yourself.
And
we're here to talk about building your own system.
Hey, look at that transition.
What a
That
segue.
segue was beautiful. Please.
So
You were gonna say
we
something?
just said play systems that make sense for what you want to do. But what if you want to break that system down? What if you want to take a hammer to it and see if you can make what you want out of it?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I do with Pathfinder. Every time I look at Pathfinder, like I said, it's called cannibalization. You eat the master and become it. It's that one episode of Bones with the Gorgum. I think it's the Gorgum.
God.
It's a
No dice, no
cannibal.
masters.
Yeah, there's a whole episode of the whole part of Bones where Zach becomes a cannibal, and basically the child eats the master, to become the master, and then finds a child to then do the same thing. It's a vicious cycle.
Are we still talking about the like detective show with the
I'm
Grey's
sorry.
Anatomy with detectives?
Yes.
I tuned out of that show too early, maybe, or
Yeah, wow.
maybe
Clearly.
not early
like
enough.
Buffy
I don't
shit.
know.
Anyway, my point is, my gross analogy aside, the point is, if you want to build something, look at what you love and take the things that you love and then put them into things that you want. And just keep doing that until it works.
Yeah. I think like if somebody tells you that you have to have played X amount of games or have to have read X amount of systems to
No, you don't.
be a valid designer, I disagree.
They lie.
They're a liar.
Lies.
I will say but reading systems, like playing them, like getting ideas and going, hey, that sounds cool, and then just taking it will help you in trying to like figure out what kind of games and mechanics that you want to use in your thing. Like
They don't even have to be tabletop games.
no.
Pull it from anything.
Oh,
Pull influence from music, from video games, from anything.
Tactics turn-based jam. I'm just saying.
Oh yes, I'm excited about that.
I have such a good idea for that. I'm gonna have
Somebody
trouble
needs to make
holding
it
on to it for
Sky again.
two months.
Yeah, you have 2 whole months to make a tactics-based turn-based tactics game, because the idea that someone hasn't made a tabletop game in that genre blows my mind. It's right there.
Literally just like roll into a dungeon like you are playing all of the hirelings.
You are the minions. You are the grunts. You are the.
I
Anyway,
love it.
we're gonna reverse engineer Warhammer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
If
just
you
like
go,
divergent evolution from chainmail. You know,
yeah, it's fine.
it's carcinization except with tabletop design. Eventually, everything will become crabs. Eventually, we will design Warhammer.
infinite crabs with infinite typewriters will eventually
Space
create
Marines basically a
Crabhammer.
crab, if you think about it.
Eventually, we're gonna get a space. We're gonna get a Space Goblins fucking RTS.
Oh my god, I'll do it.
That's a bad idea.
That sounds amazing. I actually
no.
so speaking of Space Goblins though, like a big chunk of it, if you don't know, I made a game called Space Goblins. It is a hack of Tunnel Goons, but I was gonna say that I actually don't hack a ton of like I technically hack games, but like I think I changed up its system enough because I made it GM-less. I did a bunch of these things with it that it's got like the DNA of Tunnel Goons, but it is really its own game. But initially, it was gonna pull a lot of reference and experience from dexterity tabletop games. I wanted like a whole like dexterity part of it that was like on a table. When you fly your junk ship, you're like flicking coins around and triangulating where your ship ends up, and that can crash into things. And so there was like, that's like another place where you can find influence is, hey, like what board games do you play? What weird things are people doing outside of our medium? And I was like, I want to bring that into Space Goblins. I ended up not doing it because of time and accessibility. I was like, I wanted the game to be able to be played in other ways. But then I brought tactility in a different way. I was like, fucking Legos. The game has you play with Legos instead of coins. But that's definitely like a thing about hacking games and finding inspiration from other places.
A lot of board games, single player. Also a lot of solo mode board games. Like, how can you, especially when you're thinking for things that are like GM-less, it's like, how can I play this without or with the book is the only thing I have to play with because I have no friends.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
No, it's fine.
I'll be your friend.
Yeah, we're all friends here.
Yeah.
But I like looking at board games a lot for like inspiration in terms of like how to make rules, because like board games don't have enough character creation, and that's my favorite part of game design is character creation.
Truth. I have a segue off of that. There's a really cool thing that someone should steal, not me because it sounds hard, in at least Nations and presumably many other like very traditional sort of Euro games. They'll have a solo mode you can play where you can like, they have basically built a little AI where it's like you roll a d6 and then you consult some tables and then it says what the other player does. And I'm like, if you can make a player that plays a whole super complicated like trad Euro game, you can make a little AI that will play your game with you, and that would be really cute.
I'm working on a board game which is not technically tabletop, but
play it on tabletop.
Yeah,
play it on a table.
You can play it on. You play it on. It's a tabletop game. It's a board game, but you play it on tabletop. And like the entire mechanic for the monsters that you have to fight in this game is via an AI system. I haven't figured out quite yet, but I'm trying to figure it out based on like solo Euro games like Scythe, where like the computer just does what you want.
Oh.
I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna turn it into a tabletop RPG because I hate myself.
I think my personal project on the idea of like pulling influence from wherever is I'm trying to make an RPG adaptation of Ace Combat.
Yeah.
I believe in you. I believe in. Ooh, the Gundam edition. Do the Gundam edition giant.
Is there a Gundam?
Wait, no.
Ace Combat?
Do Robotech where they change from plane to mech?
I'm sticking to the anime game first, the one where you fly through tunnels all the time.
Okay, all right.
Am I confused? Do I not know that Ace Combat has an anime game?
Ace Combat, like Ace Combat 7, Skies Unknown. Yeah, it's anime as fuck.
No, that one. I put it in chat.
Wait.
Chat can't see it.
Wait, hold up.
Maybe? I don't think.
Am I confused?
I think you are. I think we're talking about different games.
Okay.
Like the ones I'm talking about are like Ace Combat 0, the Balkan War, Ace Combat 5, the Unsung War, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know any of these.
Anyway, I'm
You're in a
making
plane, and it's anime
making
as
a
shit.
jet fighting game.
Before we get into like the weeds about which Bandai Namco game I'm confusing this with. Because it is a Bandai Namco game. I just don't know. I thought they made a Gundam version of this game.
I'm sure they did. I haven't watched all of the Let's Plays of them, but like, I'll show you the one that I'm like. I'll put a link to.
Put it in regular Twitch chat. Yeah, so everyone can see what we're talking about.
Oh my god.
Link deleted.
Oh, Link doesn't love you.
Rip.
Just type the name out.
Give me that.
This one. Off. Fucking hell. Link deleted. I'm talking in specific about Ace Combat 0, the Balkan War.
Yeah, no. Okay, I'm thinking Dynasty Warriors. The Gundam edition.
Oh yeah, the Dynasty Warriors Gundam game. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Never heard of this in my life.
Yeah.
Is that real?
You're a Gundam and you fly around like on sort of like you're not in 3D per se. You're like in space, but it's 2D space, and you walk around and you smack through hordes of tinier robots.
Ah,
This
fucking
is
hell.
good.
Link deleted.
Automodel hates you.
But
Anyway, like draw your inspiration from anywhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my
There's a
God.
lot, and I think to go back to the earlier point that like you should play as much as possible. If you can get your hands on any game, go out, find if it's on sale on itch, pick it up. If it's not on sale, like see if you can get a community copy. If it's not within your budget, go out and like borrow a book from someone if you can. But like read it. The more that you read, I think the more you will find, you will learn what your tastes are as a designer, as a player, as a GM, as a listener, as an observer. If you only consume actual play content, you don't actually play things. If you're like, oh, I want to learn about how this rule set works, and you read up on the book, like that will get you a sense of how things work. When I was starting to one of my primary focuses outside of tabletop gaming, because I'm only recently publishing tabletop games. I've been writing LARPs in the New England area for about 10 years now.
Area, shit.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And when I started running my first game, it was under a parent company, and the parent company said, okay, we want to give you the funding and the support to run under our banner, but we'd really like it because me personally, has not run a game before. Like, go out and NPC at other LARPs in the area, do as many of those as you can to see how other staff centers work, how other player bases function, what the meta is like. And as we were writing the rules, we went out and we played like 5 different games in the area. And we said, okay, this rule is great. This rule we don't like. This rule works. Obviously, in that case, we were limited because we were under a parent company. And so where that company, we had to sort of use the rules that they were already using. So it was sort of like we were playing our own, like from an SRD that company was attached to, which was not their own original system. It was another system from the area. It's the Accelerant system, which you may have heard of if you're in the New England area or in the LARPing scene or the boffer scene. But Accelerant has very particular quirks, and people like playing those games because they know the core system. And so, oh, it's an Accelerant game, I'll go play it. All I have to learn is like what the different names for some of the skills are, because all the fundamental mechanics are there. But we took that and then we were like, let's hack a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So it was a little bit different. And after the conclusion of that game, by the end of those 6 years, having played all these other games over the course of that time, having run the game, I was able to turn that into my current project, Attaway, where we said, what if we chopped off all of the fat in traditional New England boffer LARPing tropes and mechanics, got rid of, like, burned down to the core. Here's the core. What's the least amount of cognitive load we can have on the player? And then blend that with Powered by the Apocalypse sensibilities driven by the fiction. And so that's been a really fascinating experiment to see how those two things mesh, because we're trying to bring in parlor LARPers who go to games, who you go to a hotel room, you go to a ballroom, a Masonic hall, whatever it is, and you play in a tight space, as opposed to going out to a campsite for 3 days somewhere in the woods and hit people with plumbing supplies. You know, like there's a massive difference between those two. So like, how do we do the boffer scene on the campsite with combat, but very little combat, and make it appealing to people that are more interested in like very tight interpersonal dynamics, social combat, negotiation, role play,
My favorite stuff.
you know, all that stuff, right? And it's worked for the last 2 years. Obviously, we're not running it this year because of current events, but like, we wouldn't have gotten to that point. I wouldn't have gotten to that point as a designer if I hadn't been willing to open my mind up to what is available and say, like, do I need all of this stuff? Or am I just putting it in my game because everyone else has it in their game? And I think people expect that, you know?
That is my greatest falling. I'm just like, I should put that in there because people think it should be there, not because I actually need it. And then someone has to tell me to go take it out because who needs grappling rules?
Yeah.
Who needs grappling rules?
It's the same thing with PBTA design too. Like, people will look at a game and say, well, when you're making a Powered by the Apocalypse game, what are your basic moves? Well, You need a combat move. You need an investigation move.
Mhm.
You need a social move. You need a do something dangerous move. No. What is your
No.
game about? Right? The one question I think we always forget as designers is like, what kind of story am I trying to get people to play with this game? And how do the rules reinforce that theme, that story? If your game is about socialites navigating the intricacies of like Edwardian like courts, you don't need a combat move. You don't need a fight people move. Maybe you need a how dare you, sir, slap
Yeah.
someone in the face with a glove move.
Mhm.
Firebrands.
Right. You can do like Pasión de las Pasiones, strike out with if you strike out, you're doing it with words or with violence. Having the words focus, absolutely, but you don't need to like you trade harm with each other and maybe you get a bonus, whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
if you look at Bluebeards, there's like three moves
Yeah.
in Bluebeard's Bride that you use, and have like of the 6 moves or whatever that are in that game total, most of them don't use dice.
Mhm.
I mean, it's
I
like
think-
with your game, like you have to ask, one, what do your characters do that they're good at? 2, what do they do that they're bad at and are
Right.
expected to be bad at? And 3, what don't they do at all? What's not even an option for them?
Mhm.
I think like at the top of all of my docs, or at least like on a notepad or something, I do like specifically write out like what am I trying to like what story am I trying to get people to tell? Because like what we're doing is we're creating systems for people to tell specific stories. So it's like what am I trying to do? And it's a lot of your game. I think like what isn't in your game is like just as important, if not almost
Mhm.
more important than what is in it. Because again, it's I mean, just to basically echo it, but like not every game needs like if your game does not have a combat move or a combat roll or combat stats or whatever, players will just like they won't do it because they don't see it. Like they know it's not there, or like it's not incentivized. Like even if maybe the narrative can go there, then like that's not the important part of the narrative, or that's not the random part of the narrative. That's not the thing that like plays with the mechanics. And it's like that's definitely important. So it's like always kind of loop back around to like what am I trying to tell people? Like that's my golden question, right? Like what am I trying to get people to tell?
I mean, like,
should be
worry
taking
about it.
notes.
Like the dirty secret of like unstructured rules is that if the rules are unstructured, it does not mean the limits are infinite. The limits are
Yeah.
what occurs to your players.
Yeah.
So the rules aren't limitations, they're signposts. If you have
yeah.
rules for like detailed like flirting mechanics, your players will use them. And
Mhm.
if they're not there, then there's a far less likely chance of that happening.
It's like I do this with stats a lot. Like I enjoy just for fun, like on my own time, like making stat spreads, because a lot of people are like, oh, your standard stat spread, you have like your strength, con, dex, wisdom, intelligence, charisma, and then some people get fancy and they're like, oh, we don't use that, we do strength, like
Agility.
Wits, Twitch.
like wits, you know what I mean? And I'm like, all right, well, you're still like you're still mechanizing the whole person, like theoretically, right?
Yeah.
So it's like if your stats are, and I'll use like fucking what is it, the Veil as an example for
Mhm.
this. Your stats are emotions, so it doesn't matter what you do. Like you are competent people, you can do whatever you want. What your stats are telling you is how you feel doing them, and that changes your game completely, right? It doesn't matter how strong you are. You will punch them, or a move will tell you whether or not you punch them or not. What is being measured is, are you doing it while mad? Are you sad doing it? Do you hate that you have to be violent? Do you revel in violence? And I think that is infinitely more fascinating and something that people need to think about. Like you don't need strength if your game is not about characters who are strong or challenging characters for being strong. To say like, what are your characters bad at? Like what Ajey said, right? Like if
Going back real quick, or do you want to?
No, go.
Going back real quick to detailed flirting mechanics, and swerving us over to how hack game do. one of the really specific decisions I made. So my game Dragon Hearts is a hack of Mobile Frame Zero Firebrands by Vincent and Meg Baker, which is an amazing game. Has beautiful flirting mechanics in it already.
It does.
Very
It really
consent-based
does.
game. One of the things that I was thinking about when I was making my game is I was like, oh, I want to have support for like polyamorous relationships, relationships with more than two dragon people in them. And I was like, yeah, that's a thing in that game already, right? And then I went back and looked at Stealing Time Together, the game in Firebrands where you do that, and I was like, oh, wait a second. You kind of can't do that in this game. Like the rules for that game are explicitly when you're stealing time with someone, it's with only one other person, and if another person comes in, then it automatically ends the scene because like you've been discovered as your little dalliance. And I was like, oh, huh. I never really thought about that because that only comes up every once in a while. And so I had to go through and like tinker around. Just like, oh yeah, let me just change that. Actually, when someone comes in, the scene can end or it can keep going. And I think
one of us.
the games that I've played of Firebrands have never really ended up with polyamorous relationships. And I was like, huh, that's probably part of why that option wasn't quite there. And, I don't imagine they were particularly making an anti-polyamory game or anything. It's just that it was not as big of a part of the social consciousness a number of years ago when Firebrands was written. But it's been very satisfying to have made that little tweak and said, yeah, this is a thing you can do if you want. And having several other parts of the game that also support that ability to do that. And then suddenly people are playing the game and they're like, wait a second, what if everyone kissed? What if we all kissed? You don't have that.
Unless.
Okay.
I think that's such an important thing to harp on, as like the mechanics exist to reinforce the theme, right?
Yes.
And like that mechanic is there. It expands on something that you didn't see in the game that you as a designer were like, wait, no, I want this to be part of the story that I'm telling, not just like one single person relationship. Like we're not married to that idea, to use a turn of phrase unintentionally, but like we're not locked into that one choice. And like, yes, when you're designing intentionally, your game gets tighter. It gets clearer because you have those mechanics to rebuild and reinforce that theme. And the more that you do that, the more your game not only like celebrates the genre that it's in, but it telegraphs to the player what kind of game it is. Like I'll use a selfish example from Attaway LARP, where a trope in boffer combat, right? In a boffer LARP for anyone who is joining us who doesn't know, is like you're dressing up in the character, you're playing them for either several hours or a full weekend at a full site. And when you are playing that character, you have a fake weapon, whether that is a sword made of duct tape and foam, sometimes with a sock on it. Maybe it's made of latex and it looks really realistic. Maybe you have a bunch of Nerf guns or packets of bird seed that you throw at them that are like fireballs or magic missiles or whatever you want to call them, or just like poison globs. But there's real-time combat. The trope in a lot of these games is like an NPC shows up at the settlement that the game takes place at, and player's instinct is the GMs are trying to trick us, or this is a monster, or this is a threat. The only reason this person exists is to potentially like introduce a plot line, betray us, lead us into our doom, because that's what we do, right? The NPC will take us into the woods. There's 10 goblins. We beat them up. We get their treasure. We go home. But that means that you end up with this like long stretch of murder tourism where players will just roll in and kill everything that moves, because that's the verb, right? The verbs that you are giving to your players matter extremely importantly, right? Like in a immersive sim, if you are able to like pick things up, throw things, manipulate physics, whatever, those verbs are given to you by the designer for a specific reason. If they're giving you the fight verb, it's important, right?
Yeah.
So it's like in Hitman, like anything that gets an E prompt of like, oh, poison drink, or like, oh, like open this hatch, like everything that has a button prompt to it expect players to hit it.
Right.
Yeah.
And don't give them the tool and then be like, well, why did they use it? Right. So like
Why are you using this button wrong?
we wanted to make that right. We wanted to telegraph our intentions as designers, and as staff runners for violence, what violence means. And our game, we wanted it to be combat to be fast and scary and make it mean something. So instead of walking around and shooting everything that moves, in this game, you go from healthy to bleeding and crying when you take a bunch of damage, when you go down to 0 HP. So that can be from emotional damage or physical damage. But either way, you're like, oh God, I need help. Someone can talk you down. Someone can give you first aid. However they do it, that gets you out of that state. Doing anything more lethal than that, like shooting somebody, sends them to mortal jeopardy. So they're like, oh my God, I'm dying. I need an intervention of some kind. I need surgery. I need a crisis of faith. I need like a counselor, whatever it is. Shooting someone brings them to mortal jeopardy. But by default, every single human being in that game, shooting someone not only sends the other person into mortal jeopardy, it sends the shooter to bleeding and crying, because you are suffering the emotional trauma of having to take someone else's life, of inflicting that kind of violence, because not every human being is born being able to kill indiscriminately. If you want to do that, you can buy 2 skills in a game where skills are extremely limited to say, I have a coping mechanism for dealing with trauma. I've picked up smoking, I've picked up alcohol, I picked up gambling, whatever it is. And then you can just like, right, it's a vice, and you have to do that vice and still have people talk you down afterwards. But then you can just click heads all day long because you've hardened yourself. That telegraphs to other people like, oh, you just shot 3 guys in the face and you didn't even blink? Damn, I better back up. Right, this guy is going to throw down at any second. And that, to me, when players come into a game and they see like, oh, I can't just kill things. Maybe I have to talk to this person. Maybe I have to, if I want to inflict violence, do I break their legs or do I pull the gun out? Those are two, you're raising the stakes. You're clearly like putting down more cards on the table and saying, this is what I'm willing to escalate to. But it makes that violence matter. And in a game where like you just walk around and you declare, I roll to stab him in the face every 5 seconds, you're getting very different play experiences. So, you know, it's intentionality in your design is just such a crucial like cornerstone.
We do have a outline. Should we go with the outline?
Yeah,
Let's go with the outline.
Seems fake, but sure.
So, yeah.
Fake, but sure. We killed him. So, we did hot takes. That was quick. That was quick. 30 happened 30 minutes ago. Holy crap! It's been 30 minutes. The second thing on our little outline that I had was creating an original system from scratch. So that's how I started. I'm gonna take this thing and burn and just do it myself. For a game jam in 2 months. I think I did it in a month. It was bad. It was a bad time. It was a bad time.
I mean, yeah, like literally, like the reason I started working on Bolt is because Fantasy Flight Games engaged in some serious fuckery with hacks of Genesis, and I was like, screw you, I'm gonna make my own theme park with blackjack.
Yeah, a lot of my first games were systems from scratch as well. I'm really bad at like, I guess to a degree I'm bad at content. So like I love world building. Listen here, I love world building. I love creating things. I hate writing it down. But mechanics I can write down for days. I love being like, hey, you roll these dice and you feel this way. You know what I mean? And whatever. So for me, I was like, oh, a hack is just content. It's just like you take their thing and then you reskin everything, and it's great and it's wonderful. But yeah, I was like, let's get weird with it. Space Between Stars.
I think that's making. I've yet to write an actual adventure for anything that I've written. I just keep making a system. I keep making new systems going.
Are you kidding?
I just keep making hacks I keep making bolt hacks now. Everything's bolt hacks now.
You're in a little loop of your own stuff. You're in a
Bolt
little
all the way down.
Oh yeah. It's like Bolt Cthulhu, we got Bolt Ace Combat, we've got Bolt XCOM coming.
That's branding.
Hell yeah.
You got we're gonna get
It's called I already made the thing. I'm not gonna spend more time making a new resolution system.
That's fair. That's me and Magic Girls and Mecha. I keep like going, I should do something else. Or I can just make another game in that universe.
Oh, that's
We're
right.
at this point.
I'm very different. I'm like, okay, well, I did it. Now I got to do something different. Like, I think my ADHD like manifests in my creativity hardcore, where I'm like, I've done it. Why would I make another thing? I fucking did it. Now let's make something else.
That's when you join me making micro games where you only have B5 piece of paper and everything has to fit on that one sheet of paper and it can't be the same.
Oh, we should talk about limitations later. I think that is down the list.
That's somewhere in there.
Yeah.
The process in there is.
Yeah.
Alex, Simon, creating your own system from scratch.
Yeah. For me, my creative process tends to go that I get, because I also have ADHD, very hyper focused on like a specific game experience. And then there was a time when I was going to like a weekly or more than weekly indie game, like one shot night. So I would just play the same game like 50 times and just get like drenched my brain in it. And then usually be like, okay, I love everything about this except, like when I made Dragon Hearts, I was like, I love everything about Firebrands except that the mechs can't kiss. You have this wonderful romance story when you're at the micro level, and then you zoom up to the mech level and like the romance is mostly gone. You're just fighting each other, right? Like you can, but it's not, there's no mechanics that really reinforce that. And Microscope was a huge influence on me. This is a game that I really wish everyone would be stealing more from constantly, by Ben Robbins. It's a world building game of like laying out cards and making this history that you're all collaboratively contributing to. Especially the palette mechanic in that game, I could talk about for a whole panel.
Good, yeah.
Really good way of getting buy-in for things people are interested in. So that was my introduction to tabletop role-playing games, and it's a game that you can use to tell like any story in, as long as it's a very long scale of story. So for a long time I just played Microscope because I was like, well, why would I play anything else? I could just take this story about fish wizards and do it in that game and it would work. And it took a long time for me to finally go, okay, maybe there's maybe there's things I want to do. There was a specific Microscope game that I played where I was like, oh, I really like this game about like these sort of Silmarillion-esque like demiurge deity beings like creating the worlds going around before the dawn of time. I like that deep mythology stuff.
Kill 6 billion demons shit.
Yeah. And then I was like, wait, what if that was a whole game? So that was the first game I started working on, World Like Clay, which I still have not released. But that was the first time when I was like, okay, I've already done this in Microscope and it ruled, but what if more?
What if more is literally how everything I design is, but what if? It's like improv is like say yes and
yeah.
I go the other way around of like, this sucks. What can I do that's better than this?
I think you could put on my tombstone, or I guess on my urn, like at what point is it not a hack anymore? Is like, as I'm just like designing this game, I'm like, well, I don't recognize this.
Right. I like when people say this has DNA from that. You're like, yeah, it's got some DNA from that.
You're 1/3 of a person. No.
My game is 1/3 of my name.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah. I got into design because existing systems didn't do what I wanted them to, and specifically like didn't have the intentionality, or like there's no mechanic for doing something, or like the way that it handles the mechanics for something I don't care for. Like, what if I wanted to do an investigative game that deals with horror and like gods from beyond space and time that didn't devolve into a really outdated and offensive use of like interpretation of mental health? You know, like what if not that? Like, how do we make these right? How do we take these games and like cut those things out and make it still function? Right? Does the game work when you remove this one piece from it? And it turns out a lot of the time it does, but sometimes you need to build those things from the ground up to reinforce those themes. So like as I've said before, like intentionality, build with intent. And I wanted to build games with intent to do those things, to reinforce those themes. Like if I got brought on to write the rules for a like ARG LARP hybrid game about like corporate wizards gathering magical artifacts and then trading them with each other, as like you use the magical artifacts to fight ghosts and like demons and stuff, right? But the whole mechanic of that game was like, well, I can't just give people skills. That doesn't make any sense, because we wanted it to be about community. So if the skills were the items that you had equipped, now we're getting somewhere. And that's not something that we had seen in any game in our region, or that I haven't seen ever since. Certainly, it was like, if I give you a knife and a magic like necklace and something else, then you can stab someone, you can heal them, and you can knock them back 10 feet. Great. You're our like frontline fighter, and someone else has a gun and a healing spell and like a second gun or whatever. Like, cool, you're like the DPS combat medic. But what if that wasn't your, like, you're not married to that build? You know, like, well, you could, there was a healing gun, but that's a separate point. But like, if you had the ability to have those skills, it's like you walk into a mission and that's your deck. And then like halfway through, there's a checkpoint where like, okay, shoot, we're getting wrecked. I have all of these extra artifacts in my backpack. What if I trade this to you and you give me this? And now everyone's build is constantly in flux. Everyone's encouraged to be trading with each other. Nobody is hoarding items, because you want the different, like, you'll find a build that works for you, but you can constantly swap it out. If like, shoot, player A got like ganked right off the bat and died to a monster, so now we're down a fighter. Do you have a shield in your back pocket? I'll like pull a shield out and a sword, and now I'm gonna tank. Like, we didn't see that. We wanted that to be there, and I wanted to write games that had those kinds of like exciting potentials that I just wasn't seeing out there. So if you don't see it, you should make it yourself.
And on the bit about Star Titus, as I think Mariam mentioned, the way I approach starting a game is, like how you want to make things good.
No.
Don't. Things being good. Just like
I've made a good thing in my life.
Throw out just absolute shit.
Yeah.
If it kind of works, you're fine.
Yeah.
If you, when playing the game, everything just kind of rattles and bangs and you don't trust anything to stay together,
but it does.
You're already doing better
Oh my God.
than the so-called greatest game ever. You're already doing better than them. If your thing barely runs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to tag in. I don't know how panels work.
Hot tag.
You interrupt me is how.
I just want to like yell that. So like something that I care about a lot. So background on me, I have like a BFA in game design. So like there's small. So it doesn't mean I'm like a better. Like it's just I like learned about like things about game design from an educational standpoint, and I went to the Maryland Institute College of Art. So that's sorry. Yeah, I'll just say that out loud. But like something that taught me, so like my education taught me is ideate quickly. So put something out there is, I think, like one of my biggest piece of advice to everybody. You can make your heartbreaker, but like make tiny heartbreakers is kind of what I'm saying. It's like sometimes a game is a mechanic, and it can be a beautiful game. And as soon as you get that mechanic and you test it, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Your next game can use that same goddamn mechanic with other ones. And like, just, I think that the hardest part about game design, is you want to make something perfect. Don't.
Make a duct tape prototype.
I'll pass on to you, Imani. Go on.
I was raising my hand because that's literally why I'm making 26 B5 size games. I'm like, fuck it. I'm gonna make a game a week, every week for the entirety of this year. I'm just gonna throw them out there. I'm not gonna play test them. I'm just gonna assume that they fucking work because they were a good idea in my head. And god damn it, you'll like them.
Yeah, like literally like make silly bullshit. Like
Don't play test either.
You do,
But,
yeah.
like, literally
that's the
with
thing.
Bolt.
Later down.
like I like released it for a game jam, having never play tested it, having barely copy edited it, having done no formatting. Like even now, like the actual PDF looks like shit. Like a bunch of the mechanics don't
does.
play test right. You know, like dual wielding and Bolt is broken. But I put it out there.
Yeah.
Dual wielding has never been.
If
That's
Bethesda
an
can
unsolved
charge
problem
$60
in
for
game
Fallout
design.
76, you can charge $30 for your kind of working game.
God. Like,
Wait,
listen,
what?
it's
You're right.
Fallout 76 like launched at full price.
Yeah, no.
it's yeah. It's the worst.
If
No,
Bethesda
no,
exists,
no,
your
no.
work is good enough.
Also,
and, like-
yes, Grammarly is why copy editing is how copy editing is done. I pay
I
them
think,
money,
like-
they make it better.
Yeah. I think like another very similar thing is embrace failure. Embrace failure in your design.
Mhm,
Because guess what? You will make better things. That is a
Yes.
fact. Like
Unless you quit.
if something
Don't quit.
if something
quit.
went wrong, like if you're like, oh, I made a game and you know what, like some of these rules didn't work. It didn't like other people played it. Like it exists outside of me now. Like even if it's just one person was all like, oh, I had this experience, it didn't really work. You're like, oh, okay, shit. On to the next one. You know what I mean? Like take what you learned, learn from failure.
Go the Dark Souls route.
You can
Go-
have
yes.
Death in Dark Souls means nothing. Even in the lore, death means nothing. What matters is giving up. That's what follows you.
Yeah.
If you just keep trying, fuck
Yeah.
it.
Just do it.
Either fold it into a new
patch
game.
it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Fold it into a new game or patch it. So we, as a LARP, we have a living document. This is a weird school of design. Is like we are writing a set of rules that will be played by about 40 people at a given time, 4 times a year for 6 years. And those are the only people that are ever going to interact with that system. Whoever shows up to that event is playing those rules. And I've written those rules specifically for those 40 people. So like, I didn't know who my audience was when I first wrote the game rules. Now that I've been playing with the same group of 40-ish people for 2 years, I know who they are. I know how they need to do work. I know how they play games. I can adjust the rules to fit those players, right? So you can start to design towards people who are playing your game and interacting with it, which is really exciting. But also, like, we had rules that just didn't work. Like, we have social rules in Attaway for things like charming someone or intimidating someone. You can be like, hey, charm, could you open that door for me, Mr. Guard? And the guard can choose to take it or like spend some HP and resist it and be like, excuse me, you're not supposed to be here right now. And you change your tactics. We had a tempt mechanic where you had to offer money, and specifically like increments of $100 or more would like increase the cost of HP to resist it, which means that like for the average person who only has 5 HP, every character has 5 HP, I can give you $500 and say, hey, go assassinate the mayor of the game world. And you either take it and then sort of like try to do it, or you resist it and immediately go into a crisis of faith. So there's like a nuke, and that just wouldn't work. You couldn't go up to the chief of police and say like, hey, I'm gonna give you $10,000 to kill your boss. Like
I mean,
they would never do it. So
Are
we
you
had
sure?
to patch it. Right. Well, like, well, that character's morals aside, like who knows? But like there are some things that like you just can't do. Like I'll give you like $1 million and betray your best friend. Someone is going to be like, that's never going to happen. So we've patched it. We in the off season to be like, okay, that person can resist whatever amount of money or tangible service that you offer, but then they have to tell you what it's going to take for them to do it. And in some cases, that thing is just like, it's never going to happen. Like, I'll give you like $50,000 to swim the English Channel. You'd be like, no, I will die.
Can't swim, I'll drown.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll drown. I can't swim.
Mhm.
You'd be like, or like, I'll give you all this money if you go like break Fat Tony's legs. Like, listen,
Fat
I'd
Tony.
love to, but like what you're offering is so little because Fat Tony has all these guys with him and he's going to come back and like, they're going to whack me. You better make it worth my while. I'll still do it. I need more money. So like iterate, patch it out. You can do it. It is acceptable. That's why additions are there. That's why like you can call it version 0.2 or whatever.
And notably, like like these are the kind of bugs that you won't get by just staring at your code or staring at your game mechanics all night.
God, yes.
You have to actually make your shitty prototype,
Yeah.
like duct tape and all, and see if the damn thing works.
Does
The
it
duct
float?
tape you can fix later.
Mhm.
But like there's some things that you can only learn by testing it out and seeing how it happens. Like literally the way I set difficulties for opposed checks in Bolt, at first, like all the opposed checks were too hard. I had to tweak that. And I didn't realize that until I like had a couple social checks happen and I was like, this is way harder than I expected. I have to rebalance all this. Like I didn't figure out that dual wielding was broken until Umber told me it was broken.
Of course.
Shout out to Umberaz. Get Dream at High Noon.
Shout
It's a
out.
real fucking good game.
The secret sauce is to like have those people like
Break your games.
whose opinions you trust and whose feedback you are actively soliciting.
Yes.
In
that's
your
important.
corner.
Actively soliciting.
Right.
That-
who will
that
then tell
random
you
white
like, hey,
dude-
what's up?
Yeah,
Right.
that random white dude who comes into your like itch comments and goes, I think you're like fuck up. Like
I
actually,
think your
That guy,
game's
we don't-
broken and here's why. Or like, I'm really good at breaking systems. I'd like to break yours and show you how you can make it better. Like,
No, I didn't
all right,
ask you.
homie, go make your own game.
I'm a fucking
Go make your-
min-maxer. I will try to break your game.
Yeah. But if you're not
Also,
asking
Alex-
for it, like, get out of my mentions.
Also, Simon was trying to say something, but your mic was muted, so... Not Simon, Alex, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Oh
Alex.
yeah.
Simon was saying something, but...
Am I hearable now?
You're
Yes,
good.
you're
You're
hearable.
sorry.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Take
Yes.
the floor.
There's an analogy that I really like that I'm going to try and tell as fast as I can. This may not be a true story, but it's something I heard on the internet. So there
It was
was,
fake.
there was a ceramics professor who wanted to get good product out of their students, and they said, okay, I'm going to divide all the students in my class into two groups, Group A and Group B. Group A is going to be graded as usual on how good their pots are. Group B is only going to be graded on like the poundage of clay that they turn into pots. They're going to make, if you make 50 pounds of pots, you get an A. If you get 40 pounds, you get a B. And the story goes that by the end of the year, all the people who were in Group A spent a long time training to make really good, perfect pots, and they didn't do that great in the end because, it takes longer than you think. And the people in Group B just threw out a whole bunch of pots really fast, and then by the end of it, they had gotten good at making pots, and they turned out the best pots in the class. And I feel like that's very much a tangible lesson for game design, whether or not it's actually true about pots, probably. If you do it, you'll get better at it.
I used to date someone who did pottery. Yeah.
That's something my school would have done for the ceramics, for the entire ceramics major. That sounds like something this dad would have done.
Yeah.
That's legit.
As
That's
a
so weird.
Also,
As a-
all the people who did those like 50 pounds of pots would be shredded.
Oh yeah.
Pottery
Fingers
takes
like
a lot of
cables.
muscle.
As a game design major, I mean, it was like I had 2-week homework assignments, and because of that, I had to get a game done. I had to figure out a
Multiple
mechanic. And then
classes.
just do it.
Mhm.
Yeah, with other classes. I was like, first of all, I mean, it's a ton. Oh my god. But it taught me to just be like, fucking make it, get it out there.
Perfect is the enemy of done, or however that expression goes.
Yeah.
Has some other connotations which are not great, but like the core concept of just like doing it, I know we're all up in the PBTA discourse, and like I don't want to get
Mhm.
lost in that sauce right now, but like to do
I
it,
still
you
don't know
do
what's
it
going on.
as the
Just
core of the
do
design.
it.
Like you,
Yeah.
I want to defy danger. Like, okay, how are you doing that?
Oh,
You
yeah.
have to do the thing to do the thing.
Yeah.
And, like
Yes.
if you want to do games, you have to you can't just
Make
sit there
games.
with them rolling around in your brain. You have to see it in all of these different facets and
Like,
contexts.
if
Oh.
go ahead, you have.
No, I'm gonna say moving on, but continue, and then we'll move on.
Last thing, like if your imposter syndrome is being like, yeah, this game sucks and no one's gonna like it.
Tell your
Respond
mother.
with, okay,
Mhm.
okay, it sucks, and then just
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
I promise you, your mother will give you not your mother, but someone in your life will give you a pep talk if you need. If you think this
Oh,
game
yeah.
sucks, listen, I will talk to anyone
Oh
and
my God.
everyone about my games, and at least one person a week will say, "Oh, that sounds great. That's all I need. That's the validation that I need."
Yeah.
If one person said that was a
Yeah.
good idea.
Oh yeah.
Real quick before we move on, speaking of Viditya being amazing,
Ow.
everyone should check out the new show that he's running on his channel. I'd play that.
Oh, it's
It's
so
Oh,
good.
yeah.
It is literally this process. It is, hey, we're going to
Oh,
make a
so
game show
good.
about making games. let's sit down and make a game out of some prompts over the course of a couple of hours, and you do it,
Yeah.
and it's amazing.
Invite
I was
me.
on it the other week. Check it out. It is so much goddamn fun. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Like, just
Invite me.
do it.
I will.
And the easiest way to just do it is to have like reinforcement, expectations, social, like a time limit. Those things are so helpful. Twitch.tv/Viditya.
Yep.
And
I'll put it in the chat.
there's gonna be more episodes of that. Get in on the ground floor of that because it's going to blow up and be amazing. So good. Relatedly, I'm also starting a podcast that is a very similar idea called Unplaytested, where we're just gonna make games over like the course of an hour. So if anybody wants to be on that or like submit game ideas and stuff, that's a thing that's going to exist shortly. I got some episodes in the can. I'm gonna release it later. But yeah, DM me on Twitter or whatever you like to get in on that, because you can also just make games. Just find an excuse to make games. I want there to be 100 shows that are just people making games.
Yes.
It's another thing on my urn will be it might not be perfect, but it's done. You know, like, and I think like that's important. It might not be perfect, but it's fucking done. You know, like I've done it. I did it.
I'm going to skip our point about making original system creating original systems using other games as bases, just because I feel like we touched on that already.
Yeah.
So I'm going to skip on to what are you writing? I write in Google Docs. I live, breathe, and die in Google Docs
too. Like, fuck
Oh
it.
yeah.
Someday Avidity Publisher will come in this iPad bullshit that I made on.
I made iPad.
I made iPad. There were some very weird compromises with that, but mostly it works.
Listen,
I also,
so long as you're not writing in InDesign, you're fine. You're fine.
I've put shit in InDesign. It's fine. I mean,
Andreas is doing it and it seems to be working.
I echo the Google Docs stuff, but I have to come clean that I also I'm like, I just need this out. Like, fuck it.
Yeah, personally, I've started.
PDF. I will fight you.
You should. I'm wrong, but I will do it.
I used to do everything in Google Docs, and then I would like suffer when I tried to like actually lay it out and make it look good. There are good guides nowadays on how to do that. Deep Anyway has a really good guide.
I was about to say, D, get up on that.
Everything, but especially
Go get up on D.
D will show you how to make Google Docs like sing. It's
so good.
Wild.
I should make one because apparently people don't know.
Also, Nicholas Mazik, his latest game Chalice was done in Google Slides.
Are you kidding me?
Not kidding.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Chalice was done in Slides.
So powerful.
He is. He's immensely powerful.
I also, I mean, like, on top of that, I mean, like, find the medium that works for you. Like, I'm still somebody who, like, designs on paper. So, like, this is, like, I think I have, like a whole game. I wrote, here's my one page. Here's, like, I literally wrote a one pager in my notebook. And then, there we go.
Yeah.
So, like,
I've written stuff in, like, Notability on the iPad, just, like, handwrite bullshit. Like,
Oh yeah. Also, as a plug, it's the only plug I'll do until the end of the show. If I get 5 patrons on Patreon, you get to see all my handwritten notes from Magic Girls and Neck Rising, and it's literally like 11 pages of my shitty chicken scratch. But it's beautiful. 11 pages of shitty chicken. Please, to share with the world, but you have to. It's 11 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper that are literally like.
That's incredible.
It's amazing. It's like
Imani, I have to give you money so I can see that.
Yes.
Everyone should give Imani money so they can see that.
$6 more.
Oh my god.
I was going to give a quick shout out to Scrivener if anyone hasn't checked that out.
I'm going to
Scrabble is open on my
switch to
computer.
like Scrivener or Bear or something that's actually good.
Yeah. It's like having the like whiteboard style of like putting things on note cards and visualizing it that way sometimes really helps. Putting things in sections, like I like doing layout as I'm writing, but that's not always the most helpful thing to do, right? I get caught up in the idea of like making the thing look pretty before, like at the same time as I'm trying to write out the mechanics, which is not helpful. But like something like Scrivener lets you make a folder for like, here's this mechanic, here's how combat works in this game, and then make subcategories for like a turn, initiative order, resolving attack rolls or whatever. Like here's a thing for playbooks and like character rules and whatever. Like here's a little drafts folder. I can have the text over here and a PDF of another game that I'm like shamelessly borrowing an idea from. nested into it, so I can easily reference it.
Good artist.
Great if you don't have
great
two,
artist steal.
right? Which is great if you don't have 2 monitors. But like having things like that, ways of organizing your information like that, breaking it down makes it feel a lot more manageable, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah. Also, so if you ever see my game Hot Off the Press, the current version that's up on itch.io, I literally wrote and formatted that entire document as I was going in Google Docs. People sleep on the tools that you have. Also, screen. So part of the reason why I do a lot of things in Google Docs and not like InDesign because I'm lazy is one, I'm lazy. 2, screen readers. So this is gonna be a side tangent about accessibility. It's a side tangent because headings are important. Fix your fucking headings, people. Sorry, I shouldn't curse. But fix your headings.
Fix your fucking headings.
Fix your headings. It's like consistent color balance. All these accessibility is key because listen, everyone can't see. Everyone can't see all the time. Like I'm currently wearing contacts, but like normally I'm wearing glasses. And realistically, I spend most of my time with my glasses off, looking at things on my phone. I need to be able to read your document on my phone in the dark. Make it possible.
Use the right fonts. Don't fuck around
Oh my
too
God.
much.
Also, don't pick just pick a sans serif, pick either a serif font, a sans serif font, or use Open Dyslexia. It's not that complicated. Also, Times New Roman is a standard for print, not for digital. I will die on Times New Roman.
Times New Roman is shit. If you're gonna use a fucking serif font, go Georgia.
Yeah, go Georgia.
Georgia's good.
God.
Not Garamond, Georgia.
Font. Oh my God, font talk.
We for accessibility is such a
Very specific. Yeah.
I was going to say accessibility is something that I think as designers too we should always be thinking more about. I'm in a local design group where we talk about like one of those members works on accessibility and screen readers and stuff, and they have been like very graciously offering to, for a reduced rate, like look at people's games and say, this is how you can make this better for people. Like it's something that we just do not consider frequently enough. So like for just to finish up my thought, like for our LARP, we have our rulebook is in Google Docs so that we can constantly edit it as we find problems and then iterate live for people. But we also have a second version that you can just copy all the text from and put in a font that makes sense for you. Like it's just bare bones formatting, and you can drop in whatever font you like, however it works for you. You can rearrange the text and stuff. Having that tool, there's only a handful of people that I've seen that are like, here's the doc, here's the Microsoft Word doc that I wrote this in, and then do what you want with it. That is such a simple tool that you can do right now to make it so that people can be comfortable reading your rules and understanding your game.
Because I'm thinking I'm gonna need like a Bolt accessible version that's like just giant text, high contrast, like
Oh my God.
no art.
Alt text is your friend.
I know people who just do like .text docs on top of their PDFs and stuff like that, like just raw text.
Anyway,
options are part of accessibility.
Always give. If you lay out a game, now we're talking not about game like system creation, but if you lay out a game, just do a black and white version. Like it's the same thing, but like just have a black and white text version. None of the fancy layout stuff. People have trouble reading. Even black on white, people have a lot of trouble reading that.
Yeah.
Big fonts, clear fonts.
Yeah.
Like seriously, like if you're gonna make like the kind of like black and white only version, at least 14 point, if not 16 point for bare text. Facing it a half.
Layers are your friend. Layers are also your friends.
I guess anyway. A small loop back to like making games that has to do with this is like so a big part of me as like an indie designer also was all like, oh, like one-page games seem to be the way to go. Like people really like them, and I would like just punch myself for not being able to like fit games in 1 pages, or I would shrink text a bunch. I said, screw it. So like I have my I say I have a minimum 12-point font. I don't care how many pages it's gonna be. If it reads well, if it's easy to access, if it contains all of like the words I want to use, then that's like what makes me happy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can do great things with limitations, like the 200-word RPG project.
Yeah,
is a really
200-word
cool
RPG is so good.
thing every year.
Mm.
It's so fun. A number of my game designs have come out of like starting something in that, and you're like, ooh, constraints, yeah. And I am a fool and I'm like, I've got 201 words, but I need them all. Right? God, it's so dumb. But that doesn't mean you can't make it big enough to read.
Make a 200-word game and then make a longer word game based on your 200-word game.
Exactly.
Hack your own system.
Proof of concept.
So let's see. We did programming process. So how do you do what you do? I just make shit up as I'm going along, and I throw it at other people on the internet until they tell me that I did a good job.
Yeah.
I'm a tactile designer. I always need to, even if I don't like directly play test it with somebody, I like will roll my dice specifically.
Yeah.
Look at that. Oh, that's so good.
I got a card game made. Speaking of tactile design, I needed them in my hand to touch.
Oh yeah.
Also, simulating stuff. Like,
yeah.
Mhm.
I think we can like jump into dice math because this is part of my process.
Yeah.
Like literally with Bolt, I didn't start. I started with like how to set probabilities for core resolution. I didn't think about stats or scales or anything. I started with core resolution and dice math. And the reason Bolt uses the D10 is because I wanted to create probabilities of like +1 is plus 10%. And I literally just mapped out the probabilities of shit in Excel. And that's one thing you should really do, especially if you go really, really complicated stuff like dice pools or like card games.
Mm-hmm.
You should simulate this.
Mhm.
Because like these are the kind of things where you won't really get a sense for like success rates and whatnot unless you like simulate like fucking 1,000 or 10,000 rolls and see what success rates are for like different things. And that's where tinkering in Excel really helps. Tinkering in Google Sheets helps. If you're technologically inclined, download Python, download the Anaconda like launcher for Python, get NumPy and start tinkering. Like I know programming is scary for a lot of people, but Python is just it's a lot of programming is just flowcharts. Like you don't even have to be good at math. You in fact being good at math makes you worse at programming. Let's be real.
Listen, the only note that I have under dice math and probability is everyone should do one thing they're afraid of each day, and learning Python is that one thing you should do.
Yeah.
Like literally, if you like draw out like what you want your code to do in plain English, that's pretty close to what Python actually reads.
Yeah, Python.
True.
Like Python, like give it a weekend of tinkering, and you'll be able to like you'll be able to at least put together like a basic like a die roller modifier thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, get some matplotlib in there, and you'll be able to graph out like what the probabilities of success are for your dice pool game. And that's super important because if the default difficulty of your task is 30%, that's a very different feel of a game from if the default difficulty of success is like 80.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So many games
like I
just
tuned
never
Bolt
think
for
about
50-50
that.
chance. Like
You're
that's what I
absolutely
tuned
right.
it for. And that gives you that kind of like pulpy thing of like, will it work? Will it not? Who knows? Burn tenacity and find out.
Yeah.
Fuck around and find
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
But if you tune it to be like everything's 30% shot by base, unless you really fuck shit up, then all of a sudden you're playing a horror game,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Chance of success is so important to
And you have to-
what feel.
Mm-hmm.
And like
I'm gonna
Blades in the
disagree
Dark
with
did this
you.
really well.
Mhm.
Of like it's a dice pool system, but like if you're rolling 3 dice, all of a sudden your chance of perfect success is 1 in 4, plus or minus rounding. Like that kind of like really smart dice math went into Blades in the Dark, which is why it works so well.
I just steal their dice math. I'm
Yeah.
not even gonna lie. I just steal
No, do
all the
it.
time.
Do it because
I don't even pretend that I'm not.
whoever designed the core resolution for Blades in the Dark had a probability background. I am sure of it because I saw the graphs and they work too well.
I literally sometimes rolling back up to the using other systems to make your games. I literally just take the dice math from Blades in the Dark. I look for the chart that I need. It does the thing that I need it to do, and I just change some words and keep the numbers.
Yeah.
Because they've already done the math for me. I'm not I'm not doing it again because I can't math very well.
And that's one of the values of
though I know
stealing an
part-
existing system.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, but,
Or-
like,
or-
I would take their math. But
Or
like,
intentionally adjusting from that
Yes.
from those mechanics, right? So like I just recently put out a game for the Wretched and Alone Jam called One Night at Dreddy's. That's obviously it's inspired by Five Nights at Freddy's by way of Silent Hill, where the real monster is capitalism.
So good.
But
So
yeah,
nice.
we don't care about Chuck E. Cheese trying to kill you in the middle of a dying arcade. We care about the fact that that job is bleeding you dry, and this is the only job you can take right now. So the mechanics, looking at the SRD for Wretched and Alone, was one of the most eye-opening things to me about the intent of that game, because like it's a horror game. It's like what the original game, The Wretched, is like. What if you were playing Ripley on the Nostromo, and you're the last person alive, and there's an alien that's hunting you on that ship. Every day you draw cards. Somewhere in the deck of cards that you're drawing from, you have to pull out the Ace of Hearts. You put a bunch of tokens on it. At the end of every round, you have to roll a d6, and you only remove a token from that on a 6. If you remove all the tokens, you go to the end game and you win, but you're still playing with a Jenga tower, and you have to pull those things without knocking the Jenga tower over, which is like, this is a lot of things to track. And in the SRD, it explicitly calls out one of the win conditions of the game is literally impossible by design. It is designed to be an unwinnable scenario. And the other one has a less than 1%, like 0.0001% chance of happening. The game rules state victory is meant to be challenging, but not impossible. That is statistically true. There is a less than 1% chance that you will succeed, which means it is still possible. But it is disingenuous to tell people that that is like a winnable thing. And the whole point of The Wretched is like, it's an unreliable narrator. You are never going to win. There's no hope, right? And in a horror game, if that's your intent, sure, like lean into the fact that like you are going to die in space, and like and how
like,
you die is cool. But I didn't want
also,
that for
like,
my game.
probabilities of success like
I wrote
changes
that
the game.
I didn't
Like,
write that game, but
I would love to play like a Bolt horror game, but because the Bolt is tuned towards 50-50 shots of success, and you can tactics your way out of rolls and like tenacity bring your way out of rolls. Any horror game in Bolt is less Alien and more Resident Evil.
Yeah.
You know, if you use Fate, you're gonna get more Resident Evil because it's all bell curve.
Right.
But if you go with Powered by the Apocalypse, it's gonna be more horrifying because your default roll, and Umber did a whole thread on this. Like, check out Umber's thread on PBTA math. Like, because PBTA defaults to mixed success, that's your PBTA horror game is gonna involve progression while getting wrecked. Whereas you play it in The Wretched, you're just getting wrecked. Like, the probability matters. And that's where the value of getting a system that's already gotten the guts of it play tested. Like Genesis, already the math's done. You know, Powered by the Apocalypse, the math is done. Fate, the math is done. Bolt, the math is done. That's the value of a generic system. You don't have to do the math yourself.
Yeah.
And then what you get to
It's a selling point.
What you get to do as a designer is say, okay, now that I know people are going to hit this 7 to 9 band a lot in my PBTA game, what do I make the options there be? Do I say, you know, if this happens, you betray your friend, or you get lost, or like you can have really serious stuff beyond that 7 to 9 list, knowing that it's going to come up often.
Yeah.
And like, as another example, like Hyperlight Drifter, because Andreas is in the chat right now, like the way the game's built, you're not going for the highest score. You're going because like the range bands are Fortune, Temperance, and Judgment. And the way the game is built, you should be able to tactics your way out of a combat situation, even if you roll shit. Like, that's the way the game's built out. So even your Judgment, like, stuff happens and you make progress. And that's part of the math of the system. And so as a hacker of these systems, you have to know what they're trying to do with the math. And if you're making those game systems, if you're trying to make the math yourself, you have to be honest about what you're trying to do, so that you're not getting people bamboozled into trying to make a fucking horror game out of your D&D clone. And the math just isn't going to work for horror unless you really tinker with stuff. Like, that's the dice math tells the game, and it affects the setting, and thus no generic system is truly generic. That's my hot take of the night. Done.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, every generic system is designed to do something very specific.
The
Like
question is,
you,
dude, what is that specific thing?
right. What is the one thing that is really good at? You know,
Mm-hmm.
if
I
you
mean, my
want to
combat
play,
skills.
right, if you want to play a fantasy adventure game where you go into a dungeon and fight monsters, do you want the like gritty mud and peasants that you're going to get from a game like Knave or Maze
Or
Rats?
Glog.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Or do you want like superhero fantasy of like I punch the dragon in its stupid face, and then you want to play something like probably
Swords
like
Without Master.
Bolt, right? Swords Without
Yes,
Master,
Bolt.
right?
Bolt gets you wrecked.
Exalted.
You get two
Yeah.
shots.
Well, I was
Sword
gonna
Without
say,
Master is your go-to for
or like
kicking
Fate,
ass.
right? Like
Or
you
Fate.
want high octane, like the characters are assumed to be competent, you know, that kind of thing.
Or D&D for that matter. Like
Sure.
by level 5, you're terrifyingly powerful.
Right, yeah, not level 1.
No.
You're like, this thing has 18 armor class? Well, guess we're going to be here for 3 hours.
Guess what? Yeah.
What?
I don't know how much time we have because I actually.
How many? How
I can
much
talk
time do we
about-
have?
We have,
'Cause
I think,
I
20 minutes left.
20 minutes.
Oh, okay, cool.
then
Because
we
I
have
want to.
question in the
we have
chat.
questions.
Oh, okay, cool,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, because we're pretty much done. Like, yeah, let's go. Let's go.
My nail. Sorry, everyone.
I have a-
I didn't realize that you could hear me.
I have a
you're good.
particular hobby horse I might like to hop on real quick.
Go ahead.
Please.
So we were going to talk a little bit about playtesting, and I think we've already
Oh,
said
yes.
most of the interesting stuff about that, which is that, yeah, you know, if you do it,
You
then
should.
it's good, but you also can just make a lyric game and release it, and that's fine too, right?
What is a lyric game? Tell me what a lyric game is. Pretend I'm 5.
Oh my god, a lyric game. Okay. A lyric game looks at the idea of games as like something to ingest, I guess, is a way, like something to experience. So like you don't necessarily like the act. I always say like the act of reading a lyric game is playing it like inherently. So versus say other games where like reading it you can get a lot of it, but you don't. But like to play it is still to play it. But like it's there. I know I'm not entirely right on that.
But
definition.
nobody knows what it means either, including
Yeah,
people,
what
and
does
that's
that
fine.
mean? What does that mean? Like, anyway, continue with.
It-
We got a
continue.
couple minutes left,
You could-
I think.
Yeah.
So if you're doing playtesting, and if you want to do playtesting that is useful to you, it is not intuitive to ask the correct questions to get useful feedback when you're playtesting. I ran a playtesting group for like a couple of years in Seattle, like a weekly group, and I had some insights about it that were okay. And then I listened to this one particular podcast episode, which if we can drop that in the chat, I have put the link in our chat. Bonus Experience is a great little podcast, great big podcast with some wonderful designers talking about games. They have an interview with this lady, Jessica Hammer, who is like in the science of playtesting and knows what she is talking about for reals. She has a wonderful rubric for how to ask playtesting questions, where you are separating the feedback that you want to get into some categories and making people go through all the categories, because the categories are the experience that people had playing the game, their observations of how other people were feeling playing the game, their theories about what their experiences meant, and then their advice about what to do that you should change in your game. If you just tell people, did you like my game? They'll say yes. If you tell people, what do you think? What should I do? They will immediately tell you, oh, you should make my character roll more dice or something, right? A common piece of wisdom among people getting playtest feedback is that the advice you get from players is not always or even often good or something you want to do.
It's what they want, not what you want.
Right.
Mhm.
But advice that you get from people is coming from somewhere, and the somewhere they're coming from is often something useful for you to know. So if you can make them go through and say, okay, I'm probably going to disregard your advice about your character rolling 2 more dice. But if you go all the way back to their experience and they said, I just felt really useless in combat. I felt like I wasn't helping and that sucked. You know, regardless of whether you're going to make them roll 2 more dice or you're going to give them a taunt where they can make enemies attack them, you're still going to take that experience and change it, because that's probably something you want to do as a designer. Or you say, I want you to have that experience. That's good. You're supposed to feel helpless, right? So I strongly recommend checking out that particular podcast episode. It just expanded my entire brain of like what you can do getting feedback from people. That whole EOTA model is like my jam now.
Also,
like,
have other people GM your game.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
And also,
if you can,
don't make your game be done. Going back to the other thing, it doesn't have to be done. Playtest when it's absolute shit.
Oh,
If you don't have a
You
setting for the game, just put it in Star Wars.
So like for me, like my design process is I try and get something out. Like even if like again, if it's just one mechanic, if I'm like my entire game kind of relies on this, like I don't design in PBTA, but I'm going to use it as like kind of my whole game runs on this move. There are going to be other moves, but this is the one that I want players to like use the most, right? Test the move. Like just do it. Like go out there, ask like a friend's, hey, do you have like 30 minutes? Do you want to just do like a scene? Right. I have like a weird wonky combat system that I haven't worked on in a few bits. It's called shotgun combat and it's weird. And I was like, it's not written down, it's written down like in shit like this.
Play it for me.
So like, but like I said like, hey, I had asked some friends, I was like, do you have like an hour? Because I'm not sure if rolling a bunch of dice before a combat and then picking results sounds interesting. I just want to do that. And like I said, like this weird stuff. And then I was like, oh, I could have spent like a week going like writing it all out, typing it all out, but because I got it out, and again, you can also test these things by yourself as well. Like I know getting people to play a role-playing game is tough, but I'm also trying to say like you can test small things. You don't have to play your whole 4-hour session. If you have character creation, just run character creation. If you have a world building section, just run world building. If you have combat, just run a combat. Like if that's what you're trying to do, like that's what you should try and do.
And what you could do, this might be more my design sensibility than other people, but I'm like, run a thing 30 times in a row. Like, is it fun to make a character? But if you've made 10 characters, have you used up all the juice that is present there? Most of the time when I go to like hack a thing, I'm like, oh, I want more variety. I want to be able to play this game more times. That's not true for everyone, but like if I design a game, I want you to be able to play it 100 times.
Yes.
Yeah. And especially with something that has a long lifespan, you want to be able to like make sure that like if you're playing like a playbook of something, you don't just like, if I tick these are the 5 good options, and everyone is going to pick those options and they're going to play the same character no matter what. That's boring. We did for our LARP design, we do what are called war days, which the name could probably stand to be changed, but it comes from a long line of like other games like this. We're like, we have a day, we set aside like 4 to 5 hours, and we play a bunch of hypothetical scenarios of plot lines that we're probably going to run, and we just stress test the rules. So like, here's a cop, you have to get past them to get the loot that is inside this bank vault and get out. So here are like a dozen custom character builds that we've put together. Here are the playtest rules. Build a character and come back and like try and break it, and then put it in the hypothetical scenario. Because it's not just about designing on the page. You're never going to see how those rules work until you see how someone interprets them and how it feels to play. Right? The game feel is that's the blah ding ding, right? We're like, okay, so in an initial draft of this game where you can of Attaway LARP, where you can have low like Decopunk superpowers. Like one of your powers could be to be able to like melt limbs and maim them all.
Damn.
Right? Like I gesture at you and I stop you from being able to use your arms and your legs, right? The base version is like I maim your right arm, I maim your left leg. The powered up version that you can buy a skill for is like I maim all of your limbs, but there was no cost in the initial draft. Right. So exactly. So we did a couple playtests where a player would just go in to a bunch of encounters and just be like, okay, here's a guy, I'm about to kill you. Maim all limbs. I walk past you. I take the loot. I leave. Thank you very much. I have suffered no consequences. You're stuck there for 5 minutes of real time while you wait for the effect to wear off. That sucks to be on the receiving end of. It kind of stinks for you as the player if you're considerate of like, I don't like how that feels to do to someone else. So we replaced it with a cost of like, it's wildly overpowerful, right? So like there has to be a cost. Like you take some of that, like you lose use of some of your limbs, not all of them, but some of them. So like,
that's cute.
we wouldn't have known how absolutely broken that was until we did it. And not only like how broken it is mechanically, but like if it's broken and it still feels good, maybe we can do something with it. If it's broken and it doesn't feel good, don't use it. Fix it.
Can I? So game feel is something that I really wanted to talk about, especially after we were talking about dice and dice probability. And so, I mean, you literally touched upon this at the very end, where I say like completely listen to everything we're talking about dice probability. Your math should matter, but game feel is also just as important. Like I don't like so I'm somebody who. Yeah. So on the opposite side of a lot of like what Ajey was talking about, which is wonderful, is like I like am bad at math, so I do what Imani was saying, where I just take math from other games. But then like I really for me, like I found through playtesting and through game feel, I love dice pools because I think the math in dice pools is just you add dice and bigger dice make whatever, right? But then I found to me, I'm like 5 dice in your hand, 5d6 feel the best to roll. And that's just like me. And I'm like, when I see people play my dice pool games, when they roll dice, what I want to capture is the moment of scanning them, that moment of tension of like, did we get the 6s that we need, or did we get the whatever that we need? And then so like for me, I was like, okay, when you roll a lot of dice, it's a little confusing. It's like, okay, that moment lingers a little too long. When you roll too little dice, you get that like immediately, which is good for like smaller rolls or games where that doesn't matter. But like 5 dice is kind of for me what I like in a game, because it lingers just enough. The dice scatter at just.
There's a ritual of reading the bones.
Yeah, it's like, and that like to me is something that comes from like entirely game feel. It's like what do you want people to do in your game? Like how do you want it to feel? Is it broken? Is it broken but fun? Does it matter that it's broken then? Like ask yourself these questions. Go back to your golden rule of what story am I telling? If you want moments in your story where somebody can do something just absolutely nonsense broken, but it's like a major point of the game. It's like, oh, at the end of a session, you get the boss is down to like, it's a big moment that you have to worry about. And it's all like, I'm going to hit the red button, right? There's like a video game theory terminology of like, if you give players the big red button, they will always press it. Like no matter what. It's like if you give them the button that lets them just be the best thing ever, or like that lets them like break a game, they'll always press it. So like
just for fun,
design around that. It's because it's fun.
It's Hitman.
It is.
Anything you can hit E on in Hitman, you will do.
You will do it. And so like keep that in mind. If somebody will. Like if it's in the game, they will do it. So like be mindful of that. And sometimes the answer again is like, you know, if it feels good, screw the math. I think a lot of like bad designers are all like, oh, but a D12 has a less math curve than 2D6. And I'm like, shut the fuck up. Rolling 2 dice feels good. You know what I mean?
You know, like I literally like with Bolt, like the entire like game mechanics is just, what's the fastest thing? Do the fast thing. You know?
Yeah.
But like have that pitch. Like,
there it is.
5d6 is fun, or I want fast, or if you're going Genesis, I want reading the bones to be the game.
Yeah, exactly. Like that is fun to be like, oh shit, did we fucking make it? Like matching up dice is all like, did we do it? Did we do it? Did we fuck? You know what I mean? Like I'm sorry, I'm cursing a lot. I don't know, but like I love that.
It's my fault. I started it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to all the children.
That's what I design for. Like that's why I like game design, is to create those moments, to curate those moments for other people. And that's why I make my own systems.
Question from Andreas in the chat on best licensing thoughts. Whatever's clear. I go Creative Commons because I don't give a shit about making money. If you actually want to make a job out of this, I don't know what license to use. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know licenses, but so for Magical Girls in Mecca, which is set in the universe of Neo City Chronicles, I have a whole thing. I have a book. It's gonna be great. I'm of the opinion. I'm gonna figure out what Evil Hat did for Fate Core. Not Fate Core. I mean, yes, Evil Hat, but no, not Fate Core. Blaze in the Dark. and figure out how they structured their license and be like, here, go forth, enjoy, and continue doing things in this universe with this thing and the rules that I'm going to make up because I built this thing for people to have fun. And if you want to have fun making other things, go for it.
And like I did the same thing with Bolt of like, this is gonna be Creative Commons, attribution share, like go nuts.
Yeah.
Fuck it.
Like, by default, it's gonna be like by not default, by like my lack of knowledge of the way licensing going, I'm gonna go Creative Commons. But like if I can get a fancier, more specific licensing thing written by someone somehow, then
Quest might actually have a decent license coming up. We'll see what Quest does.
Yeah,
It's Creative Commons, right? That's what it's doing.
I think so,
Yeah.
but they also have some other stuff they're doing.
Yeah.
I'm a little worried about that marketplace, but we don't need to talk about it.
Yeah, we can get lost in the sauce there for a while. But I think that like hitching your brand to a specific star is both good and dangerous.
Mhm.
Of like you're attaching yourself to the association with the brand. You're going to get recognition. You're going to get a lot of people looking for that content, right? Which is great.
Like I'm Bolt guy
But
now. Like I'm
what
sorry,
if-
I'm the Lightning Mage.
Yeah.
I think, like-
what if things happen to that brand or system or like the creator? There's a number
So-
of games where like people
There's
make
always
tons
a
of money
shitty-
on it, and
I guess
person.
I don't design. I think, and this is maybe just getting a little subjective, but it's like I think it's sometimes hard for me to market some of my games because they're wholly original. When like, or it's not even just market, but it's like people will look at my thing and versus something that maybe says this is a PBTA game or this is a Forge in the Dark game, and then like that helps. And think about that. Like, just be mindful of that. To be all like,
right.
People are going into it being like, oh, I kind of already know what this is. How much of a hack is your hack? You know what I mean? Like, or whatever.
You're getting familiarity from people for having the brand name recognition, even if it's not licensed, even if you're descended from that game style, if it's in the tradition. But
Yeah.
still, like that doesn't mean that an original rule system is not good. Those systems still have some of those have really exciting ideas that are perhaps more exciting or better for what you want it to do than the existing thing that you're already familiar with. Get outside your comfort zone. We should go to that other question that was there.
The difference between a hack, a module, and a completely new system is there is no line.
Oh no!
Yeah.
No.
Do you want to
This is where
push
we get
back on
into
that? Yeah, you want to push
No.
back?
Yeah, no, I do. Okay, so this is how because in all of my games in the back of my books I put references to things that I was looking at when I made this game. If you can't see it, but there's an entire pile of books behind me, all the things that I'm constantly referencing. The difference between what I think between homebrew exists within the universe that you're playing in. So D&D homebrew exists within the rule set of D&D. Like there might be like a little overlap into a hack when you're like making your own classes and stuff, but so long as you're playing, I was gonna say Glorian, but that's Pathfinder, whatever. So long as you're playing in Absalom and whatever Forgotten Realms, I feel like that's homebrew. So long as you're staying there, once you've left their home place, their place that they put you, then you're going into hack territory. And once you get into building your own system, it's like fuck anything you've ever done. I'm just gonna look at you for like, I'm gonna read you a book and then I'm gonna do something else.
I guess in that sense, I would say like homebrew is you mess with content, like you mess with settings, narrative, all this stuff like that. Hacks, by the way, and then at that point, I think like you're game designing. I think you can still be game designing with homebrew rules, 100%. Like when you're, but like a hack would be like, I'm gonna change how the mechanics work. How do like the things that make the story click. That's when it's a hack. So you can still be within 5e, but as soon as you go, we're changing the initiative system, and also like I don't like how AC works. I'm like, you've made a hack. You made a 5e hack. It's primarily 5e, but it's a hack. And then building your own system. Go on, sorry. And then building your own system is when you, I think like is when like you start bringing in other things, when you start like building up your own ideas. I think I don't have like a percentage in my head, but I know there's some ambiguous percentage where I'd be like, oh, this is yours now. But I mean, I would still say a hack is yours, but like it's no longer kind of.
These are remind people that belonged to someone else. That's the difference between a hack and a building your own system. It's a hack. You used to say this is like powered by blah blah blah, or forged in the blah blah blah, or descendant from the blah blah blah. But like building your own system, this is mine. Like if I took this to the Writers Guild and the Writers Guild said would arbitrate that this is my thing that I made because I did most of the work on it.
Yeah.
It's literally a number. Like there's literally the Writers Guild of America has like a number. It's like if you've done this amount of work on this thing, this is now yours.
That's exciting.
That's cool.
But what I was gonna say is it's a difference between literary fiction and fan fiction. It doesn't really exist. We're just gonna pretend that it does because it makes you feel better.
I think that's pretty good.
And definitely, like, I like to think of it as like my game has the DNA of a lot of different games in it, right? Where you're like, all the different games that I came up through, everything that I've read has moments, has little influences. You know, sometimes things you don't even see until you reread another game and you go like, oh, hey, I just kind of ripped that right out of that game and stuck it in mine. And like, that's
like,
awesome.
I did that.
Like I think about that with like Bolt. Like Bolt is that like bad TTRPG's tweet of like, catch me making Genesis Pathfinder. Like that's Bolt.
Yeah.
A Pathfinder Genesis. Install a bit of Cyberpunk 2020.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of PBTA in it.
I'll shout out I'm sorry to just say Street Magic. I'm sorry to just say Street Magic. Like Street Magic is its own game in my head. It is very much its own game, but it like was built off of Microscope. Like I would not call Street Magic a Microscope hack, even though like there's so much like similarity in terms of its like its play structure, but so much of like what it tries to do, what it's trying to get you to tell, like the actual words in the game itself, like so much of it is its own thing that I wouldn't call it a hack. I would say like, oh, it's like, oh, if you liked Street Magic, you will like Microscope is how I would like kind of put it.
Like Richard III, you'll like Hamilton.
Yeah.
Leaving behind your thinking tracks for other people to see where you've drawn your influence from, I think is such a crucial thing as designers, to not only show the player what your intent is with a certain rule where you've sort of developed the idea from, so they can go back and say, oh, I know how that works, here's how this works, but also for attribution for where you're drawing this inspiration. We have bibliographies for books. We need ludographies for games, where you say, this is a rule that I have taken from here, and here's why. Or like, I've borrowed the idea. Like I have this in I wrote a game about Cats, the musical.
Did you really?
I didn't. I did. You can go to colorspurgames.itch.io. You can play for one night only.
So good.
Where a lot of those rules that I borrowed are not directly lifted, but they're directly inspired by. Of like, Fiasco has you passing dice between players as like signaling like your intent for like setting things up for good or bad. And then I borrowed that idea, but not wholesale, and then just shifted it for a key part of that game. Like things like that, you can have the inspiration and pay attribution to it. And I think it's very vital that we as designers show where we are borrowing from, without just like, this is something I've created from whole cloth, because it didn't come from nowhere.
Also, call back to that panel title. Everything is a remix.
Everything is a fucking remix.
And like this is how we like build a community. Like this is how like our games don't exist in a vacuum. You know what I mean? Like we talk about wanting to create like a greater tabletop RPG community, and like if your game has a ludography, then it just inherently lets people know, oh, other shit is out there. The things I like about this came from that, and maybe I will like that too.
Like you know, like Bolt is a tabletop chop shop game now. Like if you like this game, you might like Unconquered, you might like Mnemonic, you might like Tidebrick, you might like Green Doom.
Okay, we gotta
wrap this up.
We should do our intro.
Okay, outros. Okay, so I do a link in chat for Everything is a Remix, which is a video from 2015 by this dude about how everything is literally a remix of something else.
Nice.
Everything. Literally, no one has had an original idea since day one. Don't feel bad. Like, don't feel bad. But so here's outro. So I'm gonna do my outro real quick, and I'm gonna count on my fingers so I don't forget anything. So hi, I'm Imani. I use she/her pronouns. I make tabletop RPGs, board games, card games, and everything that you can think of under the sun, including visual novels. You can find me on itch.io. I also have a Patreon page and a Coffee page. Feel free to donate money to me because all the money that you give me literally goes towards paying artists to make pretty things for my games. Wait, where'd they go? Fuck, where'd they go? Here they are.
Go.
I lost my cards. Oops, I knocked into my mic. Look at the pretty. Look at it.
Oh, it's so good.
Oh, it's so good.
Look
That money
at
is
it.
going to good places.
The money is going to good places. Please give me your money so I can pay people to make pretty art for me. Thank you. I'm also on Twitter all the time. I'm constantly online. Also on Sunday, this coming Sunday, I am running a playtest for a bunch of my micro games. Please, if you're interested in playtesting any of my games, they're all like under 2-hour games. You don't have to stay for the whole thing. Come hang out with me. Hit me up on Twitter. That is my outro.
Hey.
I think Simon.
Yeah, that's me.
I changed my windows to you. Yes, it's Simon.
My name is. I might be really choppy right now. My name is Simon. I'm on Twitter at Lucha Libris. You can check out my games at colorspraygames.itch.io. I am a professional GM for Magpie Games. If you want to go check out what that's about and play some fantastic games like Masks or Bluebeard's Bride, magpiegames.com/curated-play. I am a voice actor. You can listen to me tell some stories on the Penumbra Podcast, a queer sci-fi and fantasy audio drama. That's at the Penumbra Pod on Twitter, thepενumbrapodcast.com. And I will be here right after this playing For the Honor and a bunch of other streams. If you go to my Twitter, I have a schedule that I'm putting up momentarily that has my whole streaming schedule for the next month.
Sweet. My name's Ajey. I am the Lightning Mage. I am Bolt Guy. Bolt is available on itch for like $5 at Ajey.itch.io. There's also a mage pack for magic shit. And there's a Cthulhu version if you want Cosmic Horror Revenge fantasy. That's all there. I'm going to be working on a Kickstarter for Bolt very soon. Expect it to come out like September is the tentative period for the Kickstarter. To get sick art and sweet layout. That's coming. Also a cool setting book. That's one of the stretch goals. So that's happening. You can also find me on Twitter at Ajey, just my name. You'll catch me tweeting shit at hashtag Tabletop Chop Shop. Shout out to the Tabletop Chop Shop. It's good, folks. We talk about game design without discoursey bullshit. It's a great party. Yeah, that's me. Follow me on Twitter. I'll say bullshit.
Good bullshit. I endorse it. Hi, I've been Viditya. You can find me on Twitter at Viditya Voletti, and you can follow me there where I sometimes talk about design things and other stuff. I have a lot of fun. I'll sometimes do like little world building threads. You should go check that out. I did one today. And I'll keep doing it. And you can find my games at vidityavoletti.itch.io. I make a ton of things. Like I was saying, I like to branch out. So like, I'm sure you'll find something there that you like. I have a few like somewhat generic systems also. If I can shout out some of my games, check out my Game 6e GM-less, which is a hack of the Game 6e, but I made it GM-less. And so, that's really great. And then also Space Between Stars is a really good kind of like a space opera game that's also GM-less. So definitely check that out. And Space Goblins is a great game that I made. So yeah, just go throw me some money. I don't have other places right now, but I'd appreciate it. I also
Shotgun Combat.
Shotgun Combat. It'll be out. Trust me. Some point.
Can't fucking wait.
Follow me on twitch.tv/Viditya Voletti. We're figuring out how to do I'd play that like with just better production, but it'll hopefully come up in a month. And
the
I also
VOD
just
for the
play games.
existing ones there though, right?
Yeah, go watch the VOD for that.
That is
Also,
so
if you
fun.
want, I do sometimes just do live design nights. So if you want to see how I design games, I do that for you live. So you can go and check out VODs for how I made like a drinking game, which was really fun. I made like Snowfall in Dog City. Snowfall in Dog City is a great game. And I do most of my live design nights are charity streams. So if you go, you can donate money and screw up my design, and I'll have to figure out how to work that in. So it's great. I had to make a piss stat because somebody donated to charity. That could be you.
Fires. Use P to put out fires.
Snowfall in Dog City. It's a good game. It's not out. That's me. Sorry. I rambled.
Is it me
Alex, you're
next?
up.
That's
The
you.
last one. Okay. Hi, I'm Alex. You can follow me on Twitter at @fractaldragon or fractaldragongames.itch.io. No, just fractaldragon.itch.io is where I have my 2 games that are out yet. I have like so many more games that are like 98% done, you guys. But that aside, one thing that I have that actually exists right now is Simon and Viditya and I are on a really great actual play stream playing Monster of the Week, the Unnatural Disasters campaign, which is an absolute blast. All BIM podcast, everyone just loves each other and is best friends, and our characters are all amazing. I play a big buff dragon lady, and it's the best because just anime is real. We're going to be Wednesdays at a time slot, probably
8 p.m. EST.
Yeah.
Whatever that is, PST.
on the All Nerds Here Twitch channel. So check that out. It is such a fun campaign. Also, if anyone's interested in that Unplaytested podcast that I mentioned, you can go to unplaytested.com, which we made like a week ago and is still just a super rough mock-up of a website, but you can submit a game idea that we have to make later and stuff. And yeah, it's a thing that's going to become a thing not too long from now. So this is a potentially good time to get hyped about it. And there's an Unplaytested Twitter. You can follow that. You'll probably be the first one who's not me. It doesn't have any content yet, but it will.
I'm the first one followed.
No, damn it! Hi. Leave a review.
Leave a review.
Make a hack of it and please tag me so I can hype it.
Or
Yeah,
buy it
also that.
again.
Comment Viditya on any of my games and I'll write a cheat for it. Sorry.
Woo!
Woo! Just yep, sounds right. Good
Sounds
point.
good.
We all had our games in the racial justice itch.io bundle, so you already own a lot of our you all own our games, at least one of them, and so we were all cheering for leave a review. If you like it, make a hack, do the thing that makes us happy,
And tag us so we can hype it.
and tag us so we can hype it, because nothing makes us happier than people liking our stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Trust me, I am.
I did it's dangerous to go alone. Take this. It's exactly what it sounds like, except imagine it at a convention. Simon, what did you put in the bundle? You're muted. No, Simon can't. Okay.
What?
What game did you have in the bundle?
Oh, what game did I put in the bundle? It's called Goblins in Shadow. It's a hack of Blades in the Dark, where you're goblin revolutionaries overthrowing your vampiric elven colonizers.
It's a very good game.
Nice.
I put both my games in there, including my little tiny one-player game that I don't know if any humans have ever played that, so you could be the first. If you want to check that out, tell me about it.
I put. Oh no! Wait. I
I kind
put.
of missed the boat.
Yeah. Sorry, Ajey. You go first. Ajey, you do it. You do it.
I kind of missed out on the racial justice bundle, but
Oh,
if you
okay. No problem.
if you send me a screen cap of a bail fund donation, I'll give you a link to Bolt.
Oh, perfect. That's incredible. Oh no. Oh no. I'm Simon.
That's because
now.
my camera goofed up for a second.
Well, I put in. Simon Moody, put in Goblin's Shadow on the race. No. Me, Viditya, put in Space Goblins. So you already own Space Goblins. You get 2 Goblin games on this panel. It's wonderful. They're both really good. Mine's about being Space Goblins, running around crashing ships. You play with Legos. It's good. You trash cop ships. That's what you need. That's all. And I also put a game called Spellcatects, which is a kind of like rune making, spell making game. It's really fun if you just want to draw in color and then do some wacky stuff. Hack that. Put that in your other games. Make Spellcatects your magic system in another game that you've come up with really cool mechanics for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye.